sources are out there that can give you honest information about whatever company you're dealing with. And I found a great Facebook page it was really the last thing that I needed for this company, which is a very subtle title for a Facebook page, which is called Protect Yourself from Predatorial Distributors.
No shit.
Yes.
That's good. That's a good title, though.
Yeah.
That's a good name.
Yeah, and so I went to that Facebook page.
Hi, welcome to the Reinvention podcast. I'm Aaron Anderson, and I'm here with the incredible Foster Solomon, writer, director, and now producer, also teacher, all sorts of stuff.
Yes.
But you've done like a billion things in the entertainment industry, in the education industry, but mostly I want to talk to you. You've made a film.
Yes.
And you made a really cool film.
Thank you.
So for those not listening, you can see it at hawksridgefilm.com. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
The truth is, I wanted to sort of pretend to watch it, so sort of zoom through it so that I could have this interview and just say, yeah, I saw it. But I got sucked into it. I legitimately got sucked into it. So I have so many questions.
And just to clarify, at hawksridgefilm.com, you will see the trailer for it. We actually, I can announce here on this podcast, we got distribution, small distribution company called Indie Rights Films. Myself and the director of photography, who also did the color mix and all of that stuff, we've been together putting together what are known as the deliverables that have to go to the distributor. Yeah, I'm just going to say the trailer is there on hawksridgefilm.com. By this winter, you should be able to buy it, rent it on like Amazon and Tubi and all of those streaming services.
Very cool.
Yes.
So the distribution is going to be for like to rent, or is it going to be?
From the distribution company, we should be able to find out as we get closer whether or not, if you're like a Prime, Amazon Prime user, whether or not it's already with it. You know, we just did the Richmond Film Festival and a bunch of us filmmakers exchanging links for our films. And actually there was one guy, I was like, I'll show you the link to my film and share me yours. And then he sent me like to Amazon. And I was like, did this guy send me to a link in which it's like I have to pay for his film? And then I saw that it was like available on Prime, and since I have Prime, I was able to see it. So I maybe that'll be something like that. But the point is, we're just super excited that actually something has finally happened.
That's
after
really cool.
3 years.
Let me go way back.
Okay.
Right? The idea of making a film, not this film, any film. Like, when did you have that?
I think I've had that since I was a kid and growing up in the 80s with my dad got a camcorder. It's really interesting. The things that the things that they put on consumer camcorders when we were like kids in the 80s, they stopped doing. I don't know if you ever realized, it was like my dad, my little brother at the time, he's 12 years younger. There was some movie that he loved to watch, and he'd watched it enough times, and then some reason my dad got this wild thing of, I don't like the curse words in this, so I'm going to edit them out. And I was like, my little brother already knew all the curse words that were in it, but he still did it anyway. My dad stayed up all night because we had this camcorder in the 80s that had a dub button. It came with a microphone, and you could put it in there, and he would watch the movie, and then a bad word would be said. He would rewind it, play it, stop it, put it in. And I mean, it was terrible. My favorite one was like whatever the guy said to like this other guy, my dad changed it. It's like called him, I don't know, a bastard or something. And can we curse on this?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. So it was like something like that. It wasn't the F word so much. That's what my mom and I also found it super silly, because it was a PG rated film, but it was like he changed it to like, you smelly breath person, like that. And I would have friends come over, and my brother Hamilton would be just like, do you want to watch this movie that my dad dubbed over? And they were like, okay. And it's like something would happen, and you'd hear my dad. And my brother would go like, that's not what he says right there. You know what he actually says is, and then he would just say it. So my point being is that we had, the big shoulder camera, and I was already shooting stuff and just starting to realize from an early age, like the tricks and things. I don't know, for some reason, logically, I was already thinking about like how things that we consumed visually, like how they were made, watching how stories were made on
And how old were you?
TVs and movies. Between 10 to 15.
So you're already thinking about the shot, the angle, the light.
Maybe not the light and things. I think I was really thinking about just storytelling at that point.
And visual storytelling.
Yes. And just how stories are put together, even just in the writing. The first movie is a weird one. The first movie, Child's Play.
Right.
that came out about, like Chucky the doll.
Right.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so it's like
a
the
long
whole
time ago.
But the whole story besides the doll is the little boy is like in foster care, and there's
Right.
another girl that's in foster care as well, and she doesn't want anything to do with him. I remember watching that with my aunt, and I said just out loud, I was like, oh, eventually she's going to learn to like love this little boy, and they're going to end up, like being a family together. And my aunt went, have you seen this movie before? And I was like, no. She was like, how do you know that? And I was like, how do you not know that? I was like,
it's the structure.
It's the structure of everything. So that's what I'm really talking about. It's like the structure of how everything was put together. It wasn't until I actually started like picking up my dad's camera to start realizing like, okay, the basic editing that you can do in camera and stuff. And then my friends and I did some stuff in college, just messing around with cameras, making ridiculous, weird videos when, like in altered states of
Right.
various college altered states. And I remember my friends jokingly saying, it's like, I was the only one that was like genuinely trying to make something, like actually write something out. And like, even if it was weird, I still was trying to like tell a story. So that's like all the way back with that.
That's interesting. I mean, you have like, Steven Spielberg and all these people you hear about when they were kids putting together movies and stuff like that. And probably a lot of people who are watching this have done stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you grew up like playing with the cameras and.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say, and I feel like maybe that's also, you could easily say for things like that also, how much of those stories of Spielberg or Shyamalan or any of those people, who knows how much that was them just goofing around.
Right. Of course it was.
But they always make it seem like in those, like making of things, it was destined from the beginning. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It was just like, it could have easily been that Spielberg would be a great accountant in Boise, Idaho right now, but if not for whatever stroke of luck that he got to build on those things that he did. So, and also just kept pushing and pursuing at it, which is definitely a thing that I did. So I would say the next big jump would be living in New York in my 20s. I just got into a place I'd been auditioning for a while and not getting in any auditions for anything that I actually thought was worth my time. And then the ultimate rejection is being rejected from something that you also consider beneath you.
Oh, you're right. The dog food commercial or whatever you don't get, and you're like, I don't really want it.
Exactly.
And then you don't get it, you're like, I did want it.
It really just, all of this just came out of necessity, even all the way up here to Hawks Ridge. Came out of, well, if nobody's writing it for me, I guess I should learn how to write.
Right.
And right about two things happened at the same time in the mid-90s. Number one, in 96 and 97, I was one of 6 co-hosts on a show on the Discovery Channel called Travelers.
No kidding.
Yeah, I was on that show, and a big thing was it was a travel show. We traveled all around the world. The first season was like going to different festivals. The second season was simply going to like major cities and doing a thing on major cities. They wanted actors to be the hosts of the show, 3 men, 3 women, and not broadcasters. And then at the same time, El Mariachi by Robert Rodriguez came out, and his book came out. And I watched that and the whole mythology around making that movie for
like $6,000 or something like that.
Something like that. And then reading the book of how he did it and like the shortcuts that he did to make everything happen. That mixed with the fact that I realized I was going to exotic locations with 2 other actors that were actors, and we would always have a day off. And so I would have free camera equipment and sound equipment. And I would always have at least 2 weeks notice for where I was going.
Oh, cool.
So I was just like, it would be stupid of me
not to take advantage of this.
Not to take advantage
and did you?
Oh, God, 100%. So I would just start, I would know where we were going. I would know who my co-hosts were. And I just started writing scripts that were really simple, some sort of basic conflict, and just let the backdrop, that was my production budget. It's like we'd be in Japan and then figure out a reason for these 2 people, these characters, because we would like be in Japan for like a festival in Kyoto. And then we were next getting on a plane from there and going to Puerto Rico.
Right.
So I was like, I need to just make up a story of why these 2 people went from there to Puerto Rico, and it's the same 2 people. And then what I did was I told them each and every time, I was just like, all right, on our day off, I promised to take no more than 3 hours max. I said, you don't have to memorize anything. I will tell you everything that you have to do. Because that's what I got from Robert Rodriguez's book is I would set up the camera and, like this right here. I just set it up on you, Aaron. And I'd already like told you the story. I was like, I wrote this story, and this is what's happening. And this is what your character is, and this is what that and the other. And you'd be like, okay. And so I would point the camera at you, and I was like, so and so has just said this. Your line is this, and I would say it, and you'd repeat it, and then I'd say it again, and I'd say repeat it a couple more times, and you're responding to this.
That's cool.
And I would say okay, and I'd hit record, and I'd say go. And so Barbara would just say that line. And then I just keep the camera on Barbara, and I would go like, all right, now Michelle has said this, and your line is this. And I just told them their line.
That's actually genius.
Yeah, but here's the thing that's really, really funny. The first one that I made, I had no idea how to edit.
Okay.
So I had everything on tape. This was, like the late 90s. So this was, I think, high 8 tape. When I got back from that first one,
and all the sound is recorded in the same track as the visuals.
I just kept it really simple.
Right.
I went to, gosh, I forget what this place was, but I went somewhere. It was some sort of studio place. And it was, you could take like a 1-night class, and it was like how to use the equipment.
Right.
And so I took this like 2 to 3 hour class on how to do it. Took like copious notes because I already knew how I wanted it edited in my head. I just needed to know how to work the equipment. And then rented out space for like 4 hours, came in with all my stuff, converted it to 3/4 inch tape, used the machine, and then just edited it all together. Had friends that were musicians
who scored it
for me for free, and then just started entering it in festivals. And I mean, the thing was, I think we've all had these things when we're creative, when we're young. We know that when we were that age, I thought I was making masterpieces.
Right, of course.
I now know, it was garbage.
Right.
But I wouldn't change it for the world because I learned so much.
My friend Gregory Hoffman, he's a fight director, and he travels all around the world. And he decided that he would make a series of films. And one of the things he did exactly the same is he set up the cameras every place that he went. And then he crafted a story that allowed, a larger story that allowed that to happen. But what he did was he bought equipment, and he bought, editing and a lot of stuff. And he decided that was his film school.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's exactly what mine was. Yeah,
to jump in and just absolutely do it. And he got distribution, and now he has a film company. That's fantastic.
So did all of that, and we get to the late 90s, and I've left New York, and I'm living in Atlanta, and I'm living with one of my really good friends, and we just decided we're going to start a production company in Atlanta. We just decided to do it. And I mean, like young, I look back on it, it was just the two of us. We had no LLC. We had nothing like legal, but we bought 2 really good cameras for that, time period. And we started in Atlanta making music videos for local artists. And we sort of made ourselves like a all-purpose sort of thing, which is like, you've got the song. We would come up with the idea of what, would be, and we would run it, by the artist. We were like, we think this would be a cool idea for your song. And it would also be like things that we could afford, things that we could do, houses that we could get into.
So you're making music videos.
Yeah, we're making music videos. Then started trying to get in touch with, and we did. I say trying. We actually did. Industrial films. Like training films.
Been on many of them.
So we did. I know we did one for, and this was one I was actually like proud of, just because it was something that was like doing something good for the world. My friend's girlfriend was a nurse at an OBGYN office. It wasn't like regular OBGYN. It was like for cervical cancers, things like that. And the doctor wanted to make a video for when a woman had to go on chemotherapy.
Okay.
And she would come into the office, and the doctor would just give an info dump
right.
of here are all the things that are going to happen to you with chemo. And then what he discovered was these women would go home, and the family would go, well, what's going to happen? And them trying to remember all of this stuff would just, they would misremember stuff, not remember everything. Then it would come, and it wasn't necessarily him like trying to decrease like calls into everything. It was just what he wanted to do was make an instructional video that explained, basically, they would still say all that stuff in the office, and then like, here's a DVD to take home.
That's cool.
With your family so that you can sit down and watch it, and it's going to basically go through all of that stuff again.
Did you write that, or did you?
Now that we did not write. That, like he most definitely wrote. My partner's girlfriend, she wrote some of it as well, because we made her the talking head in it. Like the actual doctor, he did like the intro thing. And then, what was her name? Marla. She was like the nurse, like talking through. And then we had graphics of things, like what the numbers, the chemo numbers and all that type of stuff. So that one, I was like really, really proud of that one. Because like I said, like unlike some Atlanta R&B musician that we've never heard of in
Right.
her music video, which was nice, but like,
This is kind of genius because this still exists, right?
Yeah.
There's still a need for this. And as a matter of fact, the studio that we're in now has converted to try and make videos for companies. And what they find is what a business wants, what an industrial wants, or even like a medical school. They don't need 99% of the quality. They don't even need 90% of like film quality. They need 80, 70%.
Yeah.
Right? They need basic editing capabilities that doesn't look amateurish.
Right.
Sounds good, looks good, gets the point across.
Yeah.
Right? And you can do that with prosumer equipment and,
Yeah.
and some basic skills. I just did one at the hospital. It was a short video to get African Americans to get genetic testing done because of certain cancer markers.
I was going to say for prostate cancer?
Well, all kinds of cancers.
Okay, yeah.
All kinds of cancers. So they wrote the script and we hired standardized patients to act it and just edited it. And it was great fun. And like you said, it matters.
Yeah. Yes,
You know
exactly.
what I mean? You're doing a thing.
You have that sense of like, okay, this is something that actually like brings value.
Well, and
to
you were actually handing them a video, right? Then the doctors would hand them something that they would then have to take home and plug in. And now you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Now you just stream it. Say, here, click this link.
Yep.
And you can send. I mean, just the ability to do something now. And you had the idea of making this into a business earlier. And were you making money?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we still had day jobs. And so that was also the nice thing is Brett was a musician. He worked at a music store at that time. So that also took care of scoring of things. And together we bought the editing equipment and I was the main editor. And he would give input about that. And then we would talk about shots together.
So this was your side hustle?
Very much so.
Did it eventually sort of pay for its own equipment or did it end up costing you money?
No, it definitely paid for its own equipment. And I mean, like other things that we did was I remember a martial arts studio got in touch with us and they wanted to do a series of videos of different fighting style, like training videos.
Right. Okay, there's a huge market for this. My neighbor was a martial artist, and he put together a series of videos, how-to videos, out of his house.
Yeah,
but the whole point of this podcast is there's a lot of people who would like to make some sort of side hustle, or are in the midst of a side hustle, or are considering it, or something along those lines. And this is a legitimate one.
Yeah, 100%.
And a lot of people have talked about you don't need to know everything going in. You just start.
Yeah,
and you sort of learn, like the editing. You didn't know how to edit.
Very, very true.
You figured it out as you went along.
Yeah. I mean, the key is I would definitely say I knew how I wanted things to be edited. That's how I shot them. I did not know
the technique,
how to like the equipment to do it. I needed to know. As a matter of fact, like when I first moved in, when I left New York and moved in with him, I got like, I think it would be, I mean, this is 99. So this would be Premiere 1, 2, something like that. I bought it, downloaded it onto our computer, and then literally went to, this is like early streaming. Like think of how long these things took to download. I just downloaded a whole bunch of random things, picked a song, and put it in the audio thing.
Right.
And then you can push a button and it puts little markers on the timeline. So I just simply, as the song went through, hit the button on the beat. So there was a marker for everything on the beat, and then just started making a weird video of images that changed
to practice
just to learn on the beat.
Right.
Yeah. So it was in about that time, I would say, was approached by a friend of a friend who had written a script based on his own family. And it was, sort of like a Christmassy ghost story, sort of Scrooge kind of thing, but also had elements of, like an older, like a dad haunted by guilt from World War II and all that type of stuff. And he wanted to make it. And I was like, this is a perfect opportunity. I was like, we're just going to make a movie. And so we did it. And so that was very much, I was definitely, that was a weird one. I was definitely hired just to shoot the camera on it. And my friend Marty Ropelt is his name, was starring in it and wrote it as well. And he was going to direct it. And it was such a weird thing because he sort of sheepishly came to me halfway through it, not even halfway. Because I'm not a bossy person. I was not like a jerk or anything. It's just something about it. He was just like, I think you should be directing this. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing. And so somehow I became the director of this movie.
That's awesome.
So I finished that and edited that. And then I had another friend of mine. He was also writing something that was a mockumentary about 3 Elvis impersonators called We Three Kings. That one actually did make it to Amazon. I don't think it's on there anymore. So that was a lot of fun. That one I was 100% just the director of photography. on for that one because I think they knew exactly what they wanted to do. I mean, the funny thing was, it was very much their lives. They are actual Elvis impersonators in Atlanta, but they were they were definitely mocking themselves and the lifestyle of being an impersonator and everything. Very, very much influenced by Waiting for Guffman.
Right. But at this point now, you have a second career as a director and editor and all this sort of stuff that you started just sort of trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So you have your day job, but you're also like an acting career and teaching.
Yeah.
And now you also have this other career where you're getting better at doing the thing that people are paying you to do.
Yes.
And
now there's a twist coming.
Okay.
But go ahead, ask your question.
No, I was going to say, this is sort of the Billy Bob Thornton did this, right? He directed himself in Sling Blade, and Jeffrey Rush did this for, but I mean, this whole idea of I'm not getting the work I want, right? I'm going to have to write something for myself. That is a really sort of strangely traditional way to be entrepreneurial in a field that doesn't want you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And what you did was you created an entire other field of directing and writing and producing and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Now, tell me the twist.
Early 2000s, engaged, wanting to now finally get my master's degree from the Academy for Classical Acting up in D.C. Had moved from Atlanta up here to Richmond to live with Susan. Brett was going off to do his own stuff now. So sold all my equipment.
Okay.
To pay for graduate school.
Okay.
And got married and then started having kids. And then you got to have a job.
Right.
And you got to have insurance.
Right.
And so I did just when my eldest was born, like 3 months old. I didn't have any equipment anymore, but I was like, I still wanted to make something else. Were you around where you hear when like Justin Dre was here and all of his Yellow House stuff? And so it would be, like once a month going to his whole thing where it was like, shoot something in a month, you'd get a prompt for something and you had to like do that kind of thing. He gave a prompt of whatever that meant, not nudity was the prompt. I still remember it.
Not nudity?
Yes. I didn't do the month challenge. That sparked something in me of like a short film that ultimately led to like a 20-minute short that I wrote, a script about Kate and Petruchio 5 years after the end of that play.
Oh, that's great. That's genius.
And I mean, like really hit it. That was like the last one in which I was like, right after my elder was born, I was like, I want to do something else, like life. I not even just really consciously thinking about it, but you look back on it, you just realize that life was about to get crazy.
Yeah.
In terms of parenthood. And that was just the first one, much less not the second one. And so I wrote something else, set it in just one room. And that was an opportunity in which I wanted to work with somebody else who had stuff and work with a professional in some way. With real lighting and someone that was actually trained to do all of this. I think maybe he's still at VCU, Gary Gillum. And he really thought the script was funny. And we shot it in Gordon Bass's bedroom. Gave us his house. My friends who used to run the restaurant Comfort downtown, they provided the food.
Nice.
And so that was like the last one I made. And that was 2005. And then, like I said, from that point on, just life and everything caused a major. I still kept writing because writing is something you can just do whenever. And so really felt I got better in terms of writing scripts and putting things together like that.
And you're just doing that in the evenings, weekends, whenever
I can. Yeah.
Do you try and
summer breaks?
Do you try and do it systematically? Like, do you like every week I'm going to write something, or just do it when you can?
God, I wish. Yeah, no, it's definitely fits and spurts. It's the systematically thing for me is definitely outline to, like really specific points that I want to hit to then sitting down and like fleshing things out.
Right.
I've definitely learned about myself that when it does finally come, when it's like, I can't deny the idea anymore and I've got to sit down and write it, it then becomes there's next to nothing that stops me from writing it. Right. Now it's like every literal free moment.
It's in your brain.
I've got to go. And I'm definitely a longhand person. I got a little notebook, that it's just like I write it all down. Not like the whole thing, but like a big chunk of it. And then I sit down and I start typing. I'm 100% embrace the notion writing wise of whatever's coming out of my hand is what's coming out of my hand. And then when I start to type and I start to see it on the page, definitely allow myself to like, that line of dialogue isn't really great. What about this? And just sort of like adjusting things like that. And then in the overall bigger sort of thing, as long as I know where I'm ultimately going, I definitely allow the characters to tell me a different way that they, like whatever I've got in the outline and whatever I need a character to do, they could easily do something on the page that is not that. And then it becomes the bigger challenge for me in that I know I need them to get to this point to move the rest of the story forward, but they've just done this massive tangent. How can I get things back to there? And it hopefully makes it a lot more interesting rather than just simply paint by numbers kind of thing.
So what I'm fascinated by, so this is the Reinvention podcast, right? And the main thing is, if you're 20 and the idea is, what do you want to do with your life? Well, fuck it, just jump all in, right? Sell all your shit, go. If you want to be a filmmaker, just go do it, because you're 20. You got no kids, you got no house, you just fucking go, right? Well, when you're 40, when you're 30, when you're 40, when you're 50, right? That's a bad plan. Yeah. You don't want to get rid of the wife and kid. You do sometimes, but you don't. But you don't. Like, that's not the plan. The plan is, how do you hang on to some security, but also have this other drive? How is it that you can do something else?
So I feel like we're up here to Hawks Ridge now,
right?
And sort of, we'll hop back in time just a little bit. The idea for like what you saw movie wise is that cabin. That we shot in was built by my in-laws from the ground up. They bought the land up in, the Blue Ridge Mountains. That is the actual name of the place. That is actually called Hawks Ridge.
It's gorgeous.
Thank you. I agree as well. And it was a big thing of, when Susan and I started dating in 2000, it was only like 2 years old.
Okay.
They had just, like a couple of years before, sold the home that Susan grew up in Chapel Hill. Ann and Cliff had moved into a retirement community in Burlington, North Carolina, and this was the spring, summer, and early fall place that they would stay.
Right.
So that location was always there as early as going up there in 2000, and even back then, I was like, this is a location that has to have something in it.
Yeah. It's very visually striking.
Yeah, and so I was like, so there was that. It's 3 images, I'll tell you, from all the way back then. It was that, at that graveyard that was there, I had an image of one guy sitting with his back against a tombstone, and another guy
at the end of the film
standing over him with a gun.
It's a nice scene too.
Yes, thank you. And then all of those hills, those roads that like you see Elijah, my character, walking on, where like it's a flat road, and then here's the flat road, and then the embankment goes up this way, and then here's the road, and the embankment goes down that way. And all those
trees.
I was walking with our dog one time. And we were just walking, and I was looking down that embankment, and I think I'd just gotten out of the way, like off to the side, because a car had come by. And I just had the random thought of like, what would I do if I came walking by and I looked down that ravine and there was an overturned car? And I was like, how would I get the person out? How would I let anybody know this was happening? So it was those 3 quote unquote images: the cabin itself and the surroundings, that thing at the graveyard, and the car down there. Let that idea, that thing, it wasn't even a story, sat in my head for a long time, me then trying to like work backwards, trying to figure out what is the story that makes that happen. And so I was like, okay, these 2 guys are trapped in this cabin and they hate each other.
And that was the obstacle, that they were trapped and they hated each other. Not all the stuff about faith and the backstory.
Well, it really started with my grandfather was a bishop in the Apostolic Faith, the Holiness Church in Atlanta. There are certain scenes in the movie. In other words, my grandfather's name was Frank Solomon, and then my uncle, his son, took over the church. His name is Elijah Solomon. So Elijah Frank is the name of that character, simply because I grew up going to that church and staying at home with my grandfather. I watched, my grandfather sitting around in his underwear counting the offering money, and that's where that scene is.
That's a nice scene there.
And so my whole thing was, it was like, he was just grandpa. And when I would go to church and just like the reverence that everybody would feel around him and I was just like, why are you acting this way around him? He's just...
So I'm fascinated with the kernel of creative ideas, but what I'm hearing is that there are multiple kernels, including location, and they just start to coalesce in your mind.
And so I knew I wanted it to be someone based on him.
At this point, did you know, I want to make a film and I'm looking for ideas for a film, or there's just ideas that are just...
No, I knew it was going to be a film one day, but it was always just like something on the back burner, because like I said, life... getting jobs, teaching jobs,
and you
paying for everybody.
I have this location, I have this cool location, and I need a film, I need a story that can utilize this, and all these other things are coming. Got it.
They'll come. A pressure point is coming,
right,
in this story, which is that just sat for, well over a decade. if it was a preacher in a neighborhood that was a rough neighborhood, and I knew the other guy was something that like kept crime and drugs going in the neighborhood. And the funny thing was, my first thought is that it was him and it was a corrupt politician or a corrupt businessman or like mob leader, something like that kept crime there. And I realized I feel like I'm a good writer. I knew of no way to make a corrupt politician sympathetic.
You can make a drug dealer sympathetic.
Well, that's when I thought about, like here's a guy.
Well, it's because poverty.
Well, exactly. I just realized, instead of like being a top boss in the drug trade, I was like, what if the thing that connects these two guys is that they've been stagnated in this? It's like I had the Robin character say, like, I know you wanted to be at like a mega church kind of thing.
Right.
And he denies it, but she's just like, you did.
Right.
And, like he was called to this inner city neighborhood where it was never going to be easy.
And there's that great scene where he's like, you're the worst drug dealer in the world because you're still in this fucking town.
Exactly. And that's what I realized. That's the in. Is that it's these two guys that got stuck in this place. It's like if it was not like the mob boss drug dealer, but it was a guy in his 30s who's still in middle management in this like world. And so that's what came up with that idea. And ultimately, I got to tell you what ended up happening was in 2017, after a 10-year battle with cancer, Cliff passed away.
Okay.
My father-in-law passed away. And Ann and Cliff had long since stopped going to the cabin because they were too old to get up there. And so all of the family, Susan and her 3 brothers, they all took over. I mean, we as well. And Susan and I married at the time, so I was paying for it as well. But, like one of those things of we all took over the ownership of the cabin. Mm-hmm. And then we all took the responsibility of upkeep. Okay. And then just simply would post on the thing. We, like the Solomon Sanfords plan on going there for this week. And we would just reserve it.
So it's like a family timeshare at this
point. Exactly, that we already owned. So that had already been going on for years. Well, Cliff passed away. Anne was way too frail. She hadn't been up there in a long, long time. Towards the beginning of 2018, all the brothers were like, we think it's time to sell the cabin. Huh. And that was the fire under my ass.
Because now you've got this location. You got this film in your head.
Yep.
And now you have a deadline.
Yep. And so their first thought was fall of 2018. And that's when I really started putting everything together. Now, that was, of all the titles that you gave me at the beginning, producer is still the one that is just like my appreciation and reverence for producers and people that raise money, and especially for people that do things, monitor social media accounts. I then started researching crowdfunding. I got in touch with them, and I was just like, I knew I had for so long, I knew what the shots were. Oh, number one, on top of everything else, I was like, I guess I need to finally sit down and write this script. So I wrote the whole thing in early 2018. I think I'd written like the first 10 pages and then sat it aside probably for at least a year.
Okay.
And I was like, oh crap, I need to actually finish this thing. Finished it so that I could definitively show them I've got a finished product.
For the potential investor.
Yes, for my brothers-in-law,
right.
The potential location investors.
Right.
So I convinced them to wait until spring of 2019. So wait 6 months to sell it because I knew I needed it set in the winter.
You did have a fire under your ass because you had other people like, we want to sell this property.
Yeah, and I knew I wanted it set in the winter. And so the Reinvention podcast, this is what we're talking about with what do you do at this particular time of your life? I am not quitting my full-time teaching job. I've got kids, like we've got to pay for
one of whom
education.
is in the film.
Both of them are.
As the young you.
As the young me. And then in the support group of kids, that's my other one is in there as well. He's the one that is pretending to fall asleep.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like I knew I've got it written. I knew, okay, because I've been like trying to find a producer and I had no idea how to do that. And I was like, fine, fuck it. I'll learn how to crowdfund, raise the money myself. And I knew also, like, that's what I was saying. It's set in the winter. I was like, I will figure out every single shot, and I know I'm going to shoot this over, the joy of college. You and I, we know we got 4 weeks of winter break. So I was like, I'm going to shoot this then over 4 weeks of winter break.
But I'm not quitting my day job. I'm going to do it in these windows that I have here. I've got to get this done.
Yeah.
And so you're just doing it nights and you're cranking out the time frame that you can do it.
And then it became the whole thing of going through every contact that I knew that I've made industrials with and asking friends, who would you recommend for director of photography and like how to find crew. I will forever be grateful. Michael Hagan of Dovetail Productions, I had done a lot of voiceovers and things with. We shot a Window World commercial. He shot a Window World commercial with me, and then my elder was playing my son in that. I asked him. He got me in touch with this guy named Doug Bischoff, who we just clicked so fast. Really liked the script. I did a reading of it at Firehouse Theater. He really clicked with it. We clicked really well, very similar sensibilities. And it was through him that he was just like, I know these people that I've worked with that are really, really great. But, like did the thing of like gave me the information. Right. I'm the producer. I'm calling them.
Did you have a budget at this point?
Yes. I had an initial budget of, I think, about 15 to 17,000.
And how did you know you could raise that much money?
Oh, it ended up being twice that.
Okay.
But that was my first one, maybe even less, because you see, all I wanted to do was just have somebody that had like a camcorder and basic sound stuff.
Okay.
And we would just go up there and just do this like truly guerrilla style.
Right.
It was through Doug. He was like, I can give you, number one, the biggest thing was like all of his equipment, he owned himself.
Okay.
Rent free.
Nice.
Like just don't, he believed in the project that much. Because it was also downtime, because of the time I was shooting it, drastically reduced fee for him because he wasn't working. So it's, and then everybody else that was the first assistant camera, gaffer, sound people, everybody took drastic cuts in their regular rate. Because once again, I think we shot it, like December 18th to like 2 days before Christmas or something at the cabin.
And did everyone just stay at the cabin?
And we all just stayed there. And so thankfully we all got along. And so he was the one that really convinced me, like, we can make this look better.
Yeah, it looks good.
And so that then changed what I was going to raise. That then began me, all the standard ones, Indiegogo, GoFundMe. What's that third major one? Kickstarter. I had researched all of those, and then I ultimately landed on a shameless plug for them, Seed and Spark, which was made for filmmakers specifically. And I really liked their model, and they really worked with me in terms of you got to make like a preview, like an attention-grabbing video.
Right, a previs.
A previs kind of thing that they don't just let you put up. It's like you got to work on it, and then they evaluate it, and then they go, you should do this. They even have like a whole like YouTube channel of like, what you need to do to make a really, really good one. I liked their...
So there's a whole industry for independent filmmakers, how to raise money.
Dude, yeah. I liked their 80% or nothing model because there are... One of the other three has a 100% or nothing. It's like if you don't reach your goal, you get nothing. Whereas Seed and Spark was, if you just make it to the 80%, you get the 80% and then anything. And so that also creates a great buzz. It's like, hey, we've made it. Now help us get to the next
thing. Yeah.
To the next thing. Because it also just let people know, okay, this is actually going to happen.
And then do you reach out to people with this page or like all your friends and everyone?
This is where I said earlier, my respect for, up until the fall, all I had was a Facebook page. And so it was because of this, I made an Instagram page and I made a Twitter account. And
to spread the word and get connections.
Daily, multiple times a day, monitoring of those things and learning how, if you don't know this, it's like maybe your viewers do, the times to put new content out there, like the 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. slot, because that's when people are just sitting down to work.
Right.
And before they work,
they want to unwind.
They want to surf a little bit. The lunch block, the post-lunch block, the right at the end. It's like all of these specific blocks.
And you're posting at these times, Twittering, Instagram, and all the shit.
So much while also having a full-time job.
And also probably finishing pre-production for everything.
Yeah, and doing that and being a husband and being a father. And that was when, like 2 weeks into that, I all of a sudden had this feeling of anybody that I've ever known that has been like, has a job that's like digital marketing. I was like, and anytime, if they ever complained, and some back of my head was just like, well, you just on Facebook all day.
How hard is that?
How hard is that? It was so fucking exhausting and just nerve-wracking because you're just watching slowly
this thing tick up.
This thing tick up. And thankfully, I would say about 2 weeks in, I had a friend of mine from college who's out in San Francisco, and he's also a filmmaker, and he did Seed and Spark as well. I just asked him, I just, was complaining about like this feeling and everything. But he was just like, you need to know that the majority, like over half of your money is going to come in the last 5 days.
Really?
Yeah. Because
the urgency.
It's the urgency. It's also the delayed thing of people like going like, oh yeah, that's Foster's thing. When does that end? September 30th? That's a couple of weeks away.
Right.
I'll get to that then. Then all of a sudden that thing of like, oh my God, that's almost happening now. I guess I better.
Well, and then you're also probably sending out last minute blasts. Okay, we're closing in. We're closing down.
Yep.
Now's the time.
We made that goal. And ultimately, you know, like the budget for this film was like just over 30 grand.
Okay.
And in the end, I mean, 2/3 of that is from crowdfunding. The rest of it was from me.
Okay.
You know, but it was not something that I've never made this movie with the notion of like, I'm ever going to see that money back.
Right.
The movie is much more of a calling card for me of like, I did this thing.
Yeah.
I'm super proud of it. It's extremely personal, obviously, you know, like the family connections that are in it.
Well, you also have the experience of having done it and doing it. You know, you learn how to be in front of the camera by being in front of the camera. You learn how to be behind the camera by being behind the camera. You learn, like I said, my friend put himself through film school by making films. You've done this.
Yeah.
And it's good.
Thank you. And so the things I just wanted to explore with it, because I had a friend of mine, he's the pastor at like Tabernacle Baptist Church on Grove, and I wanted him to read it. And he did say, and it made me warmed my heart so much. He said like when he first read it, he thought it was going to be anti-organized religion. And he was just like, that's low-hanging fruit. And then when he read it, he was like, it's one guy's anger and struggle.
Well, it's also complex.
With God. And I mean, it's like the research that I did, there is actually a website called pastorsthathavelostfaith.com.
Nice.
And it is an anonymous support group for, as a matter of fact, the line in one of the flashbacks is a direct take from that, where Elijah says, I can't take care of myself and all of you at the same time, was a direct line I got from that website of one guy, pastor, who was basically knew that he was at the end of being able to do this because it was too difficult for him to take care of this congregation when he had lost all faith in God.
Right.
And so that to me was what was fascinating. It was fascinating to me once I had latched onto this middle management drug dealer, you know, for him, that was the thing that connected both of them, which is Elijah saying, you know, like it had become just a job.
Right.
And for Chill, it had as well. It had just become a job. And that he wanted something more. He just wanted, you know, to actually be close to his son. That's what I knew I wanted to explore. I had somebody at the film festival say something which really also made me happy. Was they were like, what was the impetus behind? It was like, they said, you know, you usually see movies in which the black character is the drug dealer.
Right. This was nice. It was the opposite. One of my favorite scenes was when he took Chill's cigarettes and was like, menthol. Fuck, of course they're menthol.
Yes, exactly.
That was great.
Exactly.
That was a nice little switch.
Somebody asked me, like, what was the choice behind doing that? And I basically said along the lines of, like, you just answered it. I was like, because that's what we're so used to seeing. And that is not universal. There are plenty of white drug dealers in black neighborhoods that have grown up
in black neighborhoods.
In that black neighborhood. I've definitely had handful of people that have been completely fixated on the amount of the N-word that I have in there.
Oh yeah, Chill is not a nice dude.
No, but I always feel like I've only had one person that was like, no matter what happened, that's just all they fixated on. Whereas the majority of people that I've talked to that really have taken the time to like watch the whole thing, when you get to the end, you realize how much of a defense mechanism that was, an intimidation mechanism, which completely doesn't work.
Because he grew up in that neighborhood.
He grew up in that neighborhood, but also, I mean, intimidation to Elijah. Like, he's trying to get under Elijah's skin, and hence the hyper use of that word.
So before we talk about distribution, the end of the movie, I really like. We have work to do, a lot of work to do. It's interesting because a lot of it deals with faith throughout, and there's clearly God is present because, or maybe not because, you know, why is this guy here? Right? There's so many things that you're just like, this is the
meant to be.
Elijah's trying to figure out what's the lesson here.
Yeah.
And there is no lesson at the end except we have to work. And I like this is a strange sort of segue. On the way over here, there was a woman standing on the corner, and she was, you know, begging. And I don't normally give money unless, you know, you're parked right next to her.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And I was like, I don't have anything. And then she was just standing there, and just tears were pouring out of her face. And I realized she's not just begging, like she's really hurting. And I dug in my wallet and I gave her like $5.
Right.
And the reason I did it was I too am an atheist or agnostic or whatever it is. But I understand that you want there to be a God. You want there to be some grace something,
some
right?
reason.
Some reason.
Yeah.
And I liked, so this is a strange sort of
I
compliment.
see where you're going.
At the end of it, like it was about, we have work to do. We
Yeah.
have work to do.
That's what I ultimately, because believe me, marketing wise and things like that, I've
This seems like
had
a good thing
long
for
time.
the church circuit, though. This seems like it could be a good thing. No.
Too much F-bombs.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Too much N-word.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of that.
It doesn't matter what the message is.
Got it.
It's there. I mean,
it's that controversial. in that way.
I did have a friend of mine from high school who donated to the crowdfunding campaign, and I mean, he did ask me that, and I very clearly said he was just like, "Is this a faith-based film? You know, which is its whole other
Right.
market,
Yeah, yeah.
as a distinct market."
Yeah.
And I was like, I wanted his money, and thankfully he did contribute, but I was not going to lie. I was like, this is not that kind of film.
Right.
That's meant to make you feel good. I mean, nothing. I don't
No.
want to come off sounding like I'm bad mouthing a faith-based film, but
Right,
the
right.
bottom line of those types of films is they're meant to make you feel.
It's like when you were a kid and you knew the end of the Chucky,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's a formula. What would have happened if this was a faith-based film, besides there not being quite as many F-bombs and
Yeah.
N-words going everywhere? God would have shown himself
Yeah.
at the end, and faith would have saved them.
Yeah.
Right? But at the end of this, there's not that nice wrap-up.
Yeah.
It's not obvious what
Yeah.
the answer is.
And that was my plan that I wanted to do with it, which was I've spent a lot of time learning how to distill so many aspects of this movie down to like the simplest of sound bites. They're not insincere, but it's really helped me learn how to boil things down. And for me, the movie is that forgiveness is not easy. In other words, if there is a God and if there's a God in this movie, I feel like the big lesson that God is teaching both of these men, which is that, yes, it's great to pray. It's great to think of all of those things, but you still have to do work.
Right.
Hence we've got work to do is, as you fixated on we've got work to do,
Right.
is it's like almost that reaching out of like, forgive me or end it for me or any of those types of things. It's going to have to be, you got to do that yourself. You got to
Right.
forgive yourself. And we got to figure out how to do that together in this cabin.
It's a nice moment.
Yeah. Thank you.
So the distribution. This
Yeah.
is interesting. So you talked about, you had somebody to help you with the lighting, the sound,
Yeah.
all the stuff. You have the idea. You know what it wants to look like. You have some
Mhm.
experience with how the camera's going to move,
Yeah.
what the shots are going to look like. You've already got all that figured out.
Yeah.
You edited it, you scored it, you got all that sort of stuff. So the mechanics of it, but then now selling it.
Yeah.
And right. I mean,
Yeah.
the ideal would be I know who the audience is going to buy this, right?
Mhm.
A faith-based film. I know what that audience is. I know what they want. I'm going to pander to them,
Right.
right? I'm going to create this movie that will sell on these circuits.
Right.
You didn't have that. So how do you find like who's your audience and how do you find
Yeah.
somebody to get to it? Like what's that process like? You go to film festivals.
Yes. Oh, I have much to say about that.
Okay.
First of all, audience wise, it was very, very funny. Like months after edited, and like friends and family and everybody looking at it, in a conversation with somebody, and we landed on the notion of like one of the challenges of trying to sell this film is that I had made a 70s drama in the 21st century, in
Kinda, yeah.
2021. It's like the pace and the
Yeah.
style of everything that I wanted it to
Yeah.
be. But here is the distribution side, the plan, Aaron. COVID fucked everything up.
Right.
Richmond Film Festival, which just ended, to me is the end of the film festival run for me
Okay.
because it started in January of 2020 at the San Diego Black Film Festival.
Okay.
That was the first festival, and it was the first it was the last live one. I actually flew
Okay.
out to San Diego.
And did you have that in your budget?
Flying out to do
Yeah,
things?
yeah.
No, that was money from me.
Okay.
Flying out there, did that whole thing, got, like I think nominated for like one of the best drama or whatever. It was really, really nice and everything. And then COVID hit and shut everything down. Because the plan was, you talk about distribution for something like this, especially a movie this small,
Right.
is the festivals is where you're going to go and face to face have people come see it, go to the parties, go to the seminars, go to the talkbacks, meet people, exchange cards or whatever,
Right,
and
right.
like
Network.
network. Well, you can't do that when every festival has switched to an online festival. Hawksridge got lots of like lovely laurels. If you go to the webpage, you'll see the poster and it's got all of these film festival laurels and it won a whole bunch of stuff. But it is just not the same when it's, you're just watching a ticker of views.
Well,
there.
also you can't work your charm magic.
Yeah. And so it sucked. And I just did not know what to do. So yet again, luck 100% prevailed in that the Louisville Film Festival, Hawksridge was in, and there was this guy, Chris Baxter, who happened to see it online during that. And then a couple of months later, emailed me out of the blue, and he's what's known as a producer's rep.
Okay.
Like with anything cynical, I took it with a grain of salt, did massive amounts of research on what a producer's rep does.
You're like, sure, you want to help me.
Exactly. And I mean, he definitely encouraged it. Went through his IMDb page, went through his website, emailed at least one filmmaker that he'd worked with and that kind of thing, and just like, is this all legitimate? Turned out to be totally legitimate. And I really like the guy. And what a producer's rep does, which once again, just remind you, my goal is never to I'd done a profit sharing deal with everybody that was involved. There's a percentage points thing, but everybody also knows that if in the end they get $5 from this, it'll be amazing.
It's cool.
I just bring that up because he is the one that had any connections to get this movie any sort of distribution. In other words, for me, sitting in my home office, in the West End of Richmond,
you're not going to be able to
I can send as much blind, cold emails.
And no one's going to care.
And so I just lucked out that out of the blue, this guy dropped into my life, was legitimate. And I think it's like the gross of anything that comes from any distribution, he gets 20% off the top.
Okay.
Which once again, for him, he's got to get a lot of people out there because even from like Amazon.
20% for an agent who's actually going to get you distribution is worth every penny.
Exactly.
Right.
And then what I also liked about him is that, spending more money to make money, it was fine. I was just like, I need it because the poster that I had was a still frame from the film. That was me up on top of the embankment looking, and Alexander's hand through the car window.
Okay.
And I just made that myself in Photoshop. And he was just like, you need a more professional looking poster. And I was like, I believe you. And so I was like, do you have a recommendation? Of course he did. And I got in touch with this guy who is, this is a nice thing about the world that we live in today. The artist that made the poster is in the Philippines.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I worked with somebody from Venezuela.
Yeah.
On a thing.
Right? Yeah. Sent him what the premise of the story was. I don't know if the guy in the Philippines ever actually watched the movie, so I just gave him a lot of information. The bottom line is I hate floating head posters.
Uh-huh.
Hate them.
Right.
But that's what this guy was making.
And they work.
Yeah. From that point forward, like once we'd signed a contract, once we talked about like what I wanted, what my goals were, he was like, it's just going to be no news is good news right now. He's like, I'm not going to spend a bunch of time telling you things that I've put it out there and they've said no.
I'll tell you when you're here.
Exactly. And I was like, I actually kind of appreciated that. I think in my 50s, I think in my 20s, I could not be that guy. I would like, tell me everything. I want to know everything that's happening. What's happening? At that point, I was just like, okay. Hope
you're a pro. You have money in this. We are together in this.
And
I trust you.
I think it was like once a month max, just a quick email of like, hey Chris, how's it going? Anything new? And he'd be like, nope. And so we did the poster thing, and maybe it worked. I have no idea, but it was about a month later. He came back and he said, we've got an offer, and it was really cool because I was in the dressing room for 12th night at Richmond Shakespeare this summer. When I got that email, and everybody's doing something, and all of a sudden I'm just like, like that, kind of thing. And so, we worked out what it is, and it's an aggregator situation, which if you don't know what that is,
no. So you're not no one's buying the film.
Correct.
Okay.
That's the way it is now. In other words, the age of you make a film,
somebody buys it for
somebody
distribution.
buys it for a huge chunk of money that's your buyout.
Right.
Not fully like a buyout. As producer, I would still get if it made money and everything. But it would like be the buyout for like the rest of the cast. It was like that initial chunk. I would, like everything that they get, they would get this, that, and the other. I had hopes that it would be something like that, but I knew in this day and age, they don't do that anymore.
Okay.
Now this is the type of distributor that then, let's just say places like Amazon, they absolutely do not and will ignore, as we said, an individual email from me.
Right.
Hey, I've got a movie. They're like, we don't care.
Right.
What they want is to have somebody like Indie Rights Films is the name of the place.
Okay.
And be like, we have 100 films.
Got it. Oh, I got it. They're bundling it.
Yes, they're bundling it and going, we've got 100 films of all these different types of categories. Because the deals that Amazon wants to do
they need content.
They need to spend like huge one-time chunks of money to one company.
But now, like when you go on Amazon Prime and you start, scrolling through the movies, your movie is now on this list.
It will be, like, by the end of hopefully this year. We're finishing up
and
the
then
final.
whatever way Amazon charges
Yep.
the consumer, there's some piece of that
Amazon
goes,
gets their chunk,
right,
and then the other chunk goes to me, which then Chris takes his chunk. To
right.
then everybody that was involved with it will take
Right.
their small.
I got it. So
Yeah.
you're now in this big ecosystem.
Yeah.
Through an aggregator.
Yeah, aggregator. But all I ever wanted was for it to be out there.
And now it's out.
Yeah.
And you have absolutely no idea what the back end on this will be. You have no idea how much money will come in or whether it will or ever.
And once again, I don't care about that at all so much as, and it's not just Amazon. I mean, what I liked about when I did my research then on indie rights, I enjoyed the fact that it seemed like they don't just simply sit back on their laurels with product, like as other streaming services start to. So it's not like an exclusive deal with Amazon. I know like Tubi is one of them. And
okay.
And so with the deliverables, then I had to like go through the film. You have to provide them where the ad breaks will be. Like on some of those some of those places like Tubi where you can watch a movie with ads.
It's not just
It's
just
not
a
random.
Oh no.
It's not random so that it doesn't interrupt a scene. And I think they wanted for a 90-minute film like 12. And so like giving them the time code of where that is, and that's where the ad break could be. And so you just do all of that. I had to get subtitles for it.
You had to pay for subtitles?
I had to pay for subtitles, which is not that much.
No, but then it can be distributed anywhere. And
exactly.
It can translate it and all sorts of shit.
It was very interesting because the service that you use, which I've discovered like pretty much everybody uses for captions. Because I had this brief moment where I was just like, is this done by a computer or does a human actually type this stuff in?
No, I have. So this podcast is transcribed by a company called Rev.
Yes, Rev. Yes.
Yeah. And there's somebody who listens to the thing.
Yeah.
And types the fucking thing out.
And so I was just like, first of all, I felt bad because of like how much the N-word is said. And I was like, this person has to say that. And then the amount of like slang that, because then if you do Rev, you get back.
You get that.
They have the little thing where they're just like, is this right? Is this what you want it to be?
Or inaudible or whatever.
Yes. And especially like the big one is, of course, when they, what was it? The Sheik's name.
Right. I imagine that's a little rough.
Yeah, which I'm sure they were so happy that I sent them the script so it would actually be written out right there. So yeah, so my thing is, it's the legitimacy, I would hope, of the calling card of, well, you just know what it is. I mean, it's the reason why you've published books on Amazon. You could just simply sell your books on whatever website, but it's that thing of like you're actually on a service.
Well, you reach a lot more people, right?
And then there's that.
Because if I have to reach everybody, it takes 1,000 years.
Yeah.
But if you put it on Amazon, you can just send them the link. The problem is the money trickles in. Like, remember when you used to make films and you'd get, or a television show, and you get a residual check like 10 years later?
Yeah.
And it's like 30 cents?
Yes.
You're like, that was cool.
Yeah.
But like, you're still getting these little tiny residuals many years later. It's probably going to be like that for this film, just over time. And you just sort of have to trust the accounting on their end.
Yeah, which is another thing that I definitely looked at for indie rights films. And I mean, if you take the time, because I know this is a big part of your podcast as well, is like the internet is a wonderful thing in terms of just research and just critical thinking in terms of sources are out there that can give you honest information about whatever company you're dealing with. And I found a great Facebook page it was really the last thing that I needed for this company. Which is a very subtle title for a Facebook page, which is called Protect Yourself from Predatorial Distributors.
No shit.
Yes.
That's good. That's a good title, though.
Yeah.
That's a good name.
Yeah. And so I went to that Facebook page and then on the page typed in the search Indie Rights Films. And it was just thing after thing of they are great. They were, did
awesome.
great stuff for me and this, that, and the other. And so that was one of those things where I was like, okay, if that's on there like that, I feel like this is a good thing.
So here's the last question. So the question normally is if you could go back in time and tell your younger self some advice, what would you give? But I don't want to ask you that.
Yeah.
Because I want to ask you if there's somebody out there, you know these people. They're standardized patients. Yeah. They're teaching public speaking in as adjuncts. They're adjunct professors, right? Mm-hmm. Most of our listeners they have a job, but they're also thinking, they're either trying to make it in another world or thinking about making it in another world. What advice would you give that person right now who's like, I don't know, man?
Yeah. I have been asked this question before. I'm just trying to figure out a better way of how I said it before. Because I realized from before that was asked to me, I don't want to give the trite answer of just...
don't give up.
Don't give up and just, like keep doing it. And the things that I said, just grabbing a camera and just... I think the big thing is still do that. And I'm also not wanting to give the trite thing of like, don't let failure stop you.
Right.
I'm like, I realize I look back on it and I'm just like, let the failure hurt, let it be discouraging, but realize it's still a part of a long process of
It's still learning.
It's still learning. And that's what I joked about saying. It was like the films that I made at that time, like, I'm like, why am I not, like I've made this short film. Why am I not getting hired to direct a TV show or something like that?
Why is this not El Mariachi?
Exactly. And I was just like, and that, was super frustrating. And I realized, still coming back to your question that you said you're not going to ask, but it requires the same answer. If I could go back, that's the thing that I would be saying is it's like, it's okay to think that you've made something wonderful right now, but learn to accept that it might be crap right now. But because it's crap doesn't mean that you should stop. Just
It's part of a process.
look at what happened with that and then make another piece of crap,
It's a little less crap.
but a little less crap. Yeah.
Be crappy in a different way.
Yeah. I think also I would come back to great conversation with my eldest child the other day in which I saw a thing that made so much sense and it was stunning to me that I hadn't heard it before, which was anything worth doing is worth doing poorly.
Right.
And I assume you know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, of course, as a 17-year-old, they were like, what does that mean? And I was like, well, let's just think about it. And the examples of like, instead of not doing any exercise,
Yeah, be bad at it.
just get out of the bed and do 10 push-ups.
Right.
So that to me is.
And over 6 months, 9 months, whatever, you're going to be better. Yeah, I mean, I have scars on my legs right now from mountain biking.
Right.
Because I suck at it.
Yeah.
But I suck a little less than I did a few weeks ago.
And so that to me is what I would be that advice, which is yes, the trite, because it's trite for a reason, because it's true. Don't give up. Just keep trying. Don't wait for permission.
That's a good one.
And that any success is, the luck for El Mariachi, even in his book, he's 100% acknowledging total luck.
Right.
It could have just faded into existence of nothing, but he happened to have the card of one executive at one thing that he happened to see of a short film that he did. And the guy, for whatever reason, was like, sure, I'll look at your movie. And everything went from there.
Right. But for every El Mariachi, there's 100 that were kind of there.
Yeah.
And lightning can't strike if you don't have anything for it to hit.
That's
you know
true
what I'm
too.
saying? Hey, dude, I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. I enjoyed this very much.
This has been great fun. And we're going to turn it off now. Visit reinventionpodcast.com for transcripts and other free resources.